Okay, so recording is started, and so we were discussing about the Naga history. Remember, again, we are discussing from our in exam perspective. So whenever we're discussing any topic under Naga history or any topic under Nagaland, remember what kind of MCQs can I expect from here and how I should be mentally ready to answer the question. Second, can we expect any 2 marks question? Now, 2 marks questions, 5 marks, and number four, 10 marks. 20 marks lagabi azi, but then 20 marks we can say, oh, yeti para 20 marks lagado na hibo. We can confidently say, right? So 22 marks laga question ahilido, how will I answer from this topic? If they ask this topic for 5 marks, how will I write? Okay. And 10 and 20 marks, more or less, we can kind of filter out, okay, they might not ask for 10 marks from such a topic. So let's also mentally be ready for this. Now, let's, like I said, let's continue our class. 1918 is the year for the formation of the Naga Club. Now, this is a picture from 2018 when the Naga Students Federation they organized the 100 years uh, commemorative program because it was formed in 1918, and in the year 2018 the 100 years centenary or whatever was observed. Now it is very ironical because in 2018 NSF they celebrated the 100 years of Naga Club here, and remember in the year 2022 I think the Naga Club members, there was a controversy, and in the middle of the night, the GCB went and demolished the NSF office. I'm sure you remember this incident. Yeah, there were lots of memes out there on social media, and this and present NSF office on the way to the DC office in Kohima. So there was a controversy regarding the building. Naga Club was saying that it was their building, it was rented out to forest department in 1970s, 80s onwards. NSF was occupying the building. So many issues and so many stories going on, but it was so ironical to me because only a few years back, NSF was celebrating the 100 years of Naga Club in Solidarity Park in Kohima, and then 5 years later, the own building was demolished by the Naga Club members. Okay, so now, there are a lot of not controversies but arguments or counter arguments regarding the formation of the Naga Club. Even the dates, some people say so many sources, but we'll just minimize, we'll not go into the controversies, but we'll just minimize the discussion from an exam centric point of view. So 1918 Naga Club was founded, that is established. The date 31st October 1918, this is the official date. Why I'm saying official because most of the documents say that it is 31st October 1918. Now recently I've also come across newspapers and some more articles in the media saying, January 7 ICTA, some people are suggesting January 7, 1918 as the date. Some are suggesting November 4, 1918 as the date. Various sources are suggesting, but more or less it is accepted that 31st October 1918 is the day when the Naga Club was established. Okay, so Naga Club is like the first formal socio-political organization of the Naga people. Remember, prior to this, even for your knowledge, we Nagas, why do we have so much tribalism and why so much hatred against each other? Not the part of, not, I'm not saying it's because of Naga Club, but we should understand that even the term Naga, my point is, even the term Naga is not from us, meaning we never live together as Nagas. Aus, they live together as Aus, Angamis, all the tribes in Nagaland, as well as in Manipur or Burma or Assam, all the Naga tribes, we never live together as Naga. For thousands of years, we never lived together. So recent phenomena that all these tribes came together and formed the collective word Naga. Okay, Okay, so why I was saying this is right. So my point is that prior to this, there was no organization representing the Nagas as a whole, right? 17th century, 18th century, we were just living on our own. All the villages, in fact, our identity was based on our village. That I belong to this village, I belong to this clan, right? Konoma was fighting against other villages, Mezoma, Chotsoma, in the Angami areas, Sima areas, also eastern areas, also the same thing. We never live together as one. And even today, we are just forced to live under the tribes. But we all have our distinct language. We all have our distinct custom and culture, right? But it is only in 1918 that the Naga Club is formed, and this is the first formal kind of social political organization of the Nagas. Okay, so there are again two theories regarding, not theories, but there are two conversations or two possible arguments or two versions. Some people say that the Naga Club was formed by, okay, prior to this, there was something called European Club in Kohima. And in the European Club, it was exclusively for the British people. They would meet together, have party, drinks, and whatever, right? So the Nagas who were working in the DC office in Kohima, like the Dubashes, the clerks, the Pishkars, the, you know, UDS, LDS, they also said that, okay, we also need to have a club like the European Club, right? So they formed together. One version says that this group of people, the intellectuals at that time, they formed together the Naga Club. Another version says that the Naga Club was formed by, remember, we were discussing about the Naga labor corps in France. They returned from the war. They had a consciousness, oh, that the world is there and that we need to have a political consciousness and that we need to come together as one people. And so they formed the Naga Club. So these are the two possible stories. But for our discussion, we will incorporate both of them. And we will say that the Naga returnees from the war, the Naga intellectuals and Naga elders are credited with the formation of the Naga Club on 31st October 1918. So for our discussion's sake, because I'm also assuming that all this were present, right? So the Naga Club initially had two branches, Kohima and Mukokchung. Some sources also say Woka, but Kohima and Mukokchung, all the sources that I have read on Naga Club say that they had branches in Kohima and Mukokchung to promote fraternity and unity among the Nagas. There are also some sources which mentions Woka as one of the branches. Okay, so this is about the formation of the Naga Club early stages. And so let's look at the office bearers. So the first president of the Naga Club, his name was Racheli Penyu, right? And who was he? He was a clerk, a pishkar. A pishkar was a term, in Indian term, who worked as a clerk in the deputy commissioner's office in Kohima. So he was the first president. Okay, Racheli Penyu. I'm assuming that he's from Kohima village. I don't know. Angamis here will uh, know better. Penyu is from which village? Anyway, that is not important. Other notable early members included, remember this name, Rozokri Sikosi. Who was this man? This man, Rozokri Sikosi, he was a teacher. He was an educated person who had studied, I think, in Shillong, or we will come to this later on. But he was the person who drafted the Simon memorandum that was submitted to the Simon Commission. This was also asked in NPSA in one of the years who wrote the draft that was submitted to the Simon Commission. His name was Ruzukri Sikosi. He was a teacher and he was also a member of the Naga Club, and individuals like Nikiri Hopisi and Koza Zenyu, both of whom had served in the Naga Labor Corps. Okay, so this is about the formation of the Naga Club, the first president, and the other members of the club. Okay, so let's not spend too much time on the Naga Club. Since we are going chronology wise, 1918 is the Naga Club formation. Now the next year, 1919, the British India, the Government of India Act, okay, the Government of India Act of 1919 it declared the Naga Hills. Naga Hills was a district at that time. Yes, Naga Hills is a district. This Naga Hills is declared as a backward tract, right? So it was declared as a backward tract by the Government of India Act of 1919. So we can only expect one MCQ from here. Now, which act declared the Naga Hills as a backward tract? The answer is Government of India Act of 1919. So what does it say? This Naga Hills area, it was to be treated as an entity separate from the British Indian Empire. Okay, so it has this small hill called the Naga Hills, which was a district. It should be treated as a separate entity from the British Indian Empire. Okay, that is clear. Right now, let's move forward and look at the 1929. We come to the year 1929, which is the time when we have read in our school in history class, Nagaland history, that 1929 is the year when the Naga Club submitted the memorandum to the Simon Commission, right? Those of you who have studied history in your college, you know why the Simon Commission came to India. Okay, so the Simon Commission came to India to, in connection with the reform scheme of India. We know this, right? So the Government of India Act of 1919, the Simon Commission came to India in order to review this Government of India Act of 1919 and to, propose certain changes. Okay, so but as far as Nagas are concerned, in the year 1928, who was the Deputy Commissioner of Naga Hills? His name was G.H. Houghton, right? So he was one of the longest serving deputy commissioners, you see, 1917 to 1935. So he informed the Naga leaders about the upcoming visit of the Simon Commission to Kohima. So Simon Commission gandu Kohima de ahibole aze gona G.H. Houghton, he told the Naga leaders in the year 1928. So the Naga club entrusted who? The Naga club entrusted, like I mentioned in the last slide, Rozokri Sikosi. Who was he? He was an educated Angami teacher who had completed his intermediate arts. So at that time, in the year 1920s, he had already completed college, intermediate arts, which is called PU. It's St. Paul's College, Kolkata. I'm assuming he was in it. Yes, very one of the most educated person Nagas at that time. It's St. Paul's College, Kolkata, to draft the memorandum. So he was approached by a group of Naga Dubashis one morning at his home in the Kohima's mission compound. They requested him to write a petition in English, right? Leveraging his education to express their collective desire for self-governance. So the Naga leaders, including our Dubashis, they went to Mr. Rozokri Sikosi's house in Kohima's mission compound. I'm assuming that is where his home was, and they requested him to write a petition. And what was to be written in the petition, what was to be written in the memorandum, is that the Nagas wanted to be independent. The Nagas have a desire for self-governance. Nagas should not be under the British. Nagas should not be under the Indians. Okay, that was what they desired. And so, but they couldn't write in English, right? So they requested Mr. Rozokri Sikosi, who drafted the memorandum that was submitted to the Simon Commission. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, Simon Commission, who the commission was led by Sir John Simon, and then he was accompanied by Clement Attlee, who became the Prime Minister of England later on, and Edward Cadogan officially visited the Naga Hills in 1929 in connection with the reform scheme of India. The objective of the Simon Commission was to review the working of the Government of India Act 1919 and decide the political future of India. So the memorandum that was drafted by the Naga Club was submitted to the Simon Commission on January 10. Remember this date, January 10. This January 10 is also celebrated as the Naga Day. Every year in Kohima, there's a program held, okay, on January 10, which is the Naga Day. Itu Naga Day dukut prahisho January 10 to kili Naga Day as because it was the day when memorandum was submitted to the Simon Commission. Okay, the memorandum was signed by 20 members of the Naga Club. So January 10 is celebrated annually as the Naga Day. Okay, now what were the contents of the Naga memorandum? So the memorandum requested that number one, Nagas be given option of self self determination after the British left India. So the first request was that Nagas should be given independence, kind of sovereignty, given the option of self determination, that the Nagas should determine themselves for the future when the British left India, right? The memorandum also stated that Nagas were never conquered by any power, but were forcibly subjugated by the British. Okay, and there is a famous line in the memorandum which reads as, "Leave us alone to determine for ourselves as in ancient times." This is a famous line that is there in the memorandum, which says that puila mugan kiniga tagishe ancient time di iniga mugan ki chari dibi. British kan naha time di mugan kiniga tagishe, right? Independent. So leave us like this. That was the message that was encapsulated in the memorandum. Okay, so which later became a cornerstone of Naga nationalism. Okay, happy Naga Independence Day. Happy Naga Independence Day to all of you. Yeah, upay na India manula ka salary kay libi Naga Independence Day no celebrate crow lagi na. Okay, now let's move forward. 1935. So the success, I mean, the memorandum submitted to the Salmon Commission was a huge success. Why? Because in 1929, the Naga Club submitted memorandum to the Salmon Commission, and the result was that in the year 1935, now, Government of India Act of 1935, it declared Naga Hills as an excluded area, okay, which is to be treated separately from the rest of India. Okay, so as per the recommendation of the Simon Commission submitted by the Naga Club, the government of India under the Act of 1935. Now, Naga Hills, this Naga Hills district, it became like a union territory. It the name was changed, the status was changed from a district into Naga Hills excluded area. Remember, Naga Hills excluded area. Okay, so Naga Hills district became Naga Hills district, Naga Hills excluded area on 3rd March 1936, removing the backward track label earlier declared by the Government of India Act of 1919. And so this Naga Hills excluded area was to be directly ruled or was to be under the governor of Assam. Okay, and so Robert Reed, he also became the governor of Assam at that time. Okay, so what does the Government of India Act of 1935 said about the Naga Hills? Naga Hills now becomes Naga Hills excluded area, and Naga Hills excluded area would be governed by the governor of Assam. Okay, so this is about the Government of India Act of 1935. Now, an important point, an important phase in Naga history, as far as you know, exams as well as our future and our past is concerned. There was a proposal in the year 1941. Okay, so before that, see, today we're living in the year 2025, and Nagaland is like, I don't know. It has been, like I said, there are more than 28 factions now, and every faction is fighting for Naga independence, supposedly fighting for Naga independence. And Nagaland, it is not going forward. There's no development in the region. We are not able to invite investment from other countries, investment from big corporations, and we are just stuck. There is a government. Of course, Nagaland was declared as a state in the year 1963. 1963 till today, we have parallel governments. We have the Indian government. We have so many other underground governments, right? So, and then we have been living as a state in India. We have been living as a state in India since 1963. We are following Indian rules. We are living under the mercy of the Indians. Now, but in the year 1941, there was a very interesting proposal by the British, which was known as the Crown Colony Proposal or the Copeland Plan. Now, what does this Crown Colony Proposal or the Copeland Plan say? And for me, who follows Naga history with a lot of passion and also a lot of sadness over how things have unfolded over the past many decades, I'm also thinking if this plan had enacted, if this plan was enacted, if this plan was accepted by the British, I mean by the Nagas and by the British rulers at that time, then the future of Nagas today would have been completely different. Okay, because ground, yeah. So what does this Copland plan said? Let's learn. 1941, the Crown Colony Proposal. First point is the Crown Colony Proposal was proposed by whom? By Sir Robert Reid, who was the governor of Assam in 1941. So first point, the Crown Colony Proposal was introduced by or was proposed initially by Sir Robert Reid. Who was Robert Reid? He was the governor of Assam in 1941. And then the same plan was reviewed by Sir Reginald Copeland. That is why it is also known as Copeland Plan. Don't get confused with the dates. 1941, originally by Robert Reid, Governor of Assam. 1946, after 5 years later, it was also reviewed by Sir Reginald Copeland, who was the British administrator of Assam. That is why it is known as the Copeland Plan or the Crown Colony Proposal. Now, the proposal was this. The plan was to create a trust territory or Crown Colony comprising the Naga Hills of Assam province in Upper Burma. The territory would be separate from the government of India. See, so the plan was the hills, Upper Burma, Inga Jadu, na Naga Hills, Arunachal, Jandia Hills, Karu Hills, Kasi Hills, itu laga mountainous region laga do, tagan ekta crown colony, na, which would come under direct rule from the British. It would not be mixed up with the Indians. Itu do alak hobuli tagi side plan do. So according to the proposal, all the hill areas of Northeast India, including Arunachal, Mikir Hills, Chandia Hills, Karo Hills, Kasi Hills, Naga Hills, Mizo Hills, Manipur Hills, also including the hill tracts of Burma, would be both under the administrative control of the crown. So at that time, India be independence panai. There is not no country called India in the year 1941. So, but the British also knew that they were going back, they were leaving India and going back to Britain, right? There was a war going on, so the idea was all these hills, Naga Hills, Lugina, Burma Hill, Lugina, all this northeast Laga area, though, they wanted to form like a separate country. And if this plan had been successful, we would have been, our future would have been a little different today. We would not have been under the Indian government. We would not been even under the Indians. They would be itu naga insurgency laga problems na dagi wo dagi siya. Peter Manula problem do na dagi dagi. But I believe we would have been living like Taiwan or Hong Kong or ini ka tagi wuli chance pishi dagi. Maybe if this plan was enacted, yeah, I'm definitely sure that Nagaland or Nagas would be living like Hong Kong or Taiwan or some other countries. So, but then this plan did not materialize. What happened? The proposal did not find popularity among either British officials or Naga leaders. British officials can rabi itu kushibanai, and then Naga leaders can also, they also did not want this idea. The Naga people who anticipated full sovereignty after the British rejected it because the Naga leaders at that time, they don't know the future. Nagaland 1950s, 60s, 70s, they bishop ya huli as they Peter Manu laga problem itu India kan bra abunan ke tamke di huli as they. We don't know this. So the Naga leaders in the year 1941, they thought that after the British left India, Nagas would be left as an independent country. That was their thought. That is why the Naga leaders also rejected this Copland plan, right? So in the person who became the governor of Assam later on, who is Andrew Clow, he also opposed the idea. Why? Because during this war, Second World War, during this time, Second World War was happening, right? And the British also realized that it was too late to create their own protectorate, right? So, but then if implemented, it could have potentially altered Nagaland status today. So, you can expect 2 marks, 5 marks about the Crown Colony proposal or the Copland plan. You can mention all these points that I have mentioned. You can also put your own inputs. Okay, so this is about the Copland plan. But sometimes I used to think if this had been enacted, things would have been a little different for us today. But definitely, we would be under the influence of China. 100%. Mokan itu alak separate country huwag na puhita kisi kuli do. India aro China majudi mokan do mihin guri dakaz. India would also be, China, but definitely would have been very developed, like I said, like Hong Kong and Taiwan, because China would have invested massively, right? Okay. Leave opine. We now have to live under the mercy of the Indian government. Now let's discuss about the Battle of Kohima. We will spend some more time here because every exam I see that they are asking at least one MCQs from here. In one of the years, they asked 20 marks. Battle of Kohima. Battle of Kohima, 20 marks. I think, if I'm not mistaken, 20 marks. I've shared you the descriptive questions, 2 marks, 5 marks, 10 marks, and 20 marks. I've compiled from 2013 to 2024, I think, and I've shared to your manager. I'm sure she has shared to you, to all of you. So this is for your answer writing practice. So I think it was asked for 20 marks or 10 marks. I'm not sure. But this question was definitely asked in the descriptive section as well. And this is a very vast topic. And it would not do justice to discuss it under 10 minutes, but then we are discussing the whole of Nagaland, and I have to finish the whole of Nagaland within like 25 classes. So we will spend like 10 to 15 minutes in the Battle of Kohima. Remember, every fact is important because as far as exam is concerned, they ask a lot of questions from the Battle of Kohima, MCQs as well as descriptive. So now let's go to the Battle of Kohima. So these are some, before we go into the battlefield, let's learn about some important quotes or important facts regarding the battle. Number one, the Battle of Kohima was fought from April 4 to June 22, 1944. So it was fought between the Allied forces and the Japanese, right? So from April 4 to June 22, April, May, June. So 3 months. April, May, June. A little more than a 3 month, right? 3.5 months. April, May, June. Yes. So the battle has been referred to by some authors such as Martin Doherty and Jonathan Ritter as the Stalingrad of the East. Why it is called as Stalingrad of the East? Movie sa manugan history pura manugan janibo. I think Stalingrad was the place where Germany invasion of Russia was halted, right? In the same way, the Japanese, they were invading the whole of Southeast Asia. They had occupied Burma, and they were planning to overtake India. And in the same way, the Japanese were stopped at Kohima. That is why the Battle of Kohima is known as the Stalingrad of the East, because Hitler, Germany, was also stopped at Stalingrad, right? So one, that's another important fact. So third point is military historian Robert Lehman said that the Battle of Kohima in Imphal changed the course of Second World War in Asia. Now we are discussing only about the Battle of Kohima because we are discussing for NPSC exams, but there is also the Battle of Imphal, which happened at the same time, and I will tell you about this when we explain the war in detail. So Battle of Kohima, Battle of Imphal, they took place at the same time. The Japanese soldiers, some division came to Kohima, some division went to Imphal, and the battle happened at the same time. That is why the Battle of Imphal is also there. But for exam point of view, we are studying only about the Battle of Kohima. But military historians are saying that the Battle of Kohima and the Battle of Imphal, it changed the dynamics, it changed the direction, it changed the course of the Second World War in Asia. Okay, so Field Marshal William Slim. So William Slim was the general who was the field marshal who led the Allied forces in the Battle of Kohima. He wrote that the Battle of Kohima would go down in history of World War II as the bloodiest battle. Okay, so Battle of Kohima is, so many important facts and attributes related to the Battle of Kohima. The bloodiest battle, Field Marshal William Slim. Okay, Stalingrad of the East, Martin Doherty and Jonathan Ritter, right? And military historian Robert Lehman Braki Battle of Kohima changed the course of Second World War in Asia. Earl Mountbatten said this battle will be remembered as one of the greatest battles in the history of mankind. Okay, and the Battle of Kohima was voted as Britain's greatest battle by British Army Museum in 2013. See, Battle of Kohima laga do, see, there are no Hollywood producers or movie. Actually, ito alak country di hoshi guli do movies tangor ulagi na tayo do, right? But then it happened in Kohima, in Nagaland, where nobody cares about. But then the British Army Museum in the year 2013, like almost so many years later, Britain had fought so many battles all around the world. But the British Army Museum in 2013, it voted, and then Battle of Kohima was eventually emerged as Britain's greatest battle, right? And the troops who fought in India and Burma in World War II called themselves the Forgotten Army. So Forgotten Army to konaze, right? If they ask in the exam, Forgotten Army are the soldiers, the sepoys, the troops who fought in India and Burma in World War II. Okay, and Battle of Kohima is also known as the Battle under the Cherry Tree. So these are some important facts regarding the Battle of Kohima. So itu kando upay na, you just have to remember them. And if you have been following closely, reading history books, military books, or Jonathan Ritter, Martin Doherty kanbra likha kitab kanbra jegule, you already know all this. Okay, so introduction is done. Now let's dive into the battle. What happened? Kuan is na mukan ulok fast price jabo de, because ito battle do discuss we'll use up all our time na. Now I want you to look at this map. So India, Burma, Mandalay, Metkela, all this are occupied by Japanese. Japanese kandu Japan bro ahigina Southeast Asia pura do takan kangar gunai. Now they are in Burma. Now the next plan for Japan is to invade India. Okay. Initially, their plan was do so. This is Imphal, this is Kohima, and this is Dimapur. Dimapur is the base where Ido British Kandu, Allied forces Kandu, they have their airplanes, they have their rations, they have their ammunitions, and Imphal Devi Aze, British Kanlaga camp, Kohima Devi Aze. So the Japanese plan was to go and cut this link. Itu rasta do kati diwo. If the Japanese are able to cut this link, then Imphal would be disconnected from Kohima, and they would not get any Russian troops, nothing. They would be isolated. That was the plan. Okay, the Japanese like a plan though. That is why initially in the first phase, Japanese troops can do Nagaland de ekta hise, and then you have learned na through the Molhi Pass ko na Saramati laga na Chafu laga paste yaze. Yeah, it the base of Mount Saramati, I think, the Molhi Pass. The Japanese entered Nagaland through the Molhi Pass. They came via this Chagasang area, and Kohima de ahigina tagan capture korishi, right? And another division went south, aro Imphal di jagina British kange surround korishi, Japanese kanbra. And then Kohima di ahigina tagan rasta do pura pon korishi. And the first phase of the battle, the British were heavily defeated. But later on, reinforcement came from Dimapur, and the British were able to defeat the Japanese. Now, here, very strange thing see, we are all Nagas now. Very strange thing is not strange na ki guwa nazane, but then the role played by Nagas. So, over the years, abuni bi papi sabi na as a Naga, yeah, as a Naga, suppose in your family, somebody comes and captures your family. And there is another party, somebody comes and captures your family, and now your family is under them. Now, if there is another party who is fighting those people who captured your family, you should support the other party, right? So that you also get liberated. That is what I also thought initially, that Indians were under the British and Nagas were also under the British. We remember about the Battle of Konoma, Battle of Kikroma, where Nagas were defeated by the British, and then Nagas were now subjugated by the British. Now, when the Japanese are coming to liberate us, we thought that, I mean, logically, Mugando Babi Aze, Mugando, Japanese or Mugando, we also look similar. We would help the Japanese overthrow the British, right? But that is not what happened. Nagas can do aro, British can get support Croatia. And then, yes, we will also learn about the role played by the Nagas. And this was also Subhash Chandra Bose laga idea bi itu itagishe get he was in Burma at this time, and he will fight along with the Japanese and overthrow the British Empire in India. Through this, the INA, the Indian National Army, formed by Subhash Chandra Bose and the Japanese army, they would march towards Delhi, right, and overthrow the British government. And there are conflicting views about Subhash Chandra Bose. Subhash Chandra Bose, ahigina, ido chakasang already puhishikona, there are historical evidence of that. Modern historians today are saying that taido ahanai. Kunuba koisi ahishi, kunuba koisi ahanai, right? So itu laga part we will not discuss, okay? But now this was the plan of Japan, and that is what they did. And Nagas, we also helped the British. Okay, let's continue. Now, so in March 1944, Japanese had already conquered Southeast Asia, and the Japanese 15th Imperial Army began in advance against the India's northeast frontier to stall a British invasion of Burma. So the Japanese were trying to not Japanese were trying to stall the British from invading Burma, right? And the Japanese plan to invade India was codenamed Operation U-Go Offensive, also called Operation C. So this is an important fact. The Japanese plan to invade India. What was the code name for Japanese plan to invade India? It was known as Operation U-Go Offensive, or it was also called Operation C. Okay, and what was the plan? The plan was to capture the British supply bases on the Imphal plain. Like I said, Imphal di China Tagan capture Grogo, and cut the road linking Dimapur and Imphal at Kohima. So Dimapur and Imphal are linked by Kohima. So they will go to Kohima and cut the supply base, right? That was the initial plan. But the Japanese commander, 15th Imperial Army Laga Commander Lieutenant General Renda Mudakuchi, he enlarged the plan to invade India itself and perhaps even overthrow the British Raj. So the first plan was this, that British will eventually invade Burma. So we will stop this British invasion of Burma. How will we stop the British invasion of Burma? By going into the northeast frontier hills and occupying Impal and Timapur by cutting off the supply link at Kohima, right? But then the general who was leading the Japanese 15th Imperial Army, he enlarged the plan and said, okay, we will not also not only do this, but go and invade India. Okay, now I hope the intentions of the Japanese are clear. Now the details of the war, I've tried to summarize it. Okay, so two divisions of the 15th Imperial Army led the attack. 33rd Division, itu Manipur chaise. Okay, the 33rd Division. So Japanese laga 15 Imperial Japanese Army division alak-alak tagi na 15, 16, 17 ninga number na Army laga rule as do Assam Rifles can be tagi na 9 Assam Rifles, 10 Assam Rifles iniga 33rd Division do Imphal Valley chaise and they captured Imphal Manipur and the 31st Division trekked to the jungles of Burma and entered Nagaland through the Molhe Pass located in the southernmost point of the Patkai mountain range. That is what we have learned in school. Now, the battle took place in three stages from April 4th to 2nd June 1944 around the town of Kohima, now the capital of Nagaland, Northeast India. So the 31st Japanese division of the 31st Division of the Japanese Army was led by Lieutenant General Kutuku Sato, and the allied forces were led by General William Slim. General Kutuku Sato came and lived in Kikwima village. There are historical sources, and I will also share some videos where he lived in Kohima, in Kigwima village, and operated from there. Okay, so he was the leader of the 31st Division, which came to Kohima, and the deputy commissioner of the Naga Hills during the Battle of Kohima was Sir Charles Pausi. Okay, so who was leading the Japanese? General Kotoku Sato. He came to Kohima. He lived in Kikuma village, and the Allied forces were led by General William Slim, who was the deputy commissioner of the Naga Hills during the Battle of Kohima. It was Sir Charles Pausi, and so the rest we have already mentioned in the previous slides. Okay, so the chronology of the battle might be a little difficult to remember, but then this is how the battle unfolded. April 4th, they start with the Japanese 31st Division, led by General Sato, began the siege of Kohima. Kohima di ahigna tagan attack korluche. They captured Kohima, they surrounded Kohima, attacking the Kohima Ridge. So Kohima di itu time di taga garrison to army laga post to itu British laga post to they were only around 1,500 men at that time. Aro Japanese kando 15,000 is na ahidashi. Okay, so obviously 15,000 against 1,500, and so they were planning to cut the Imphal Timabur road. So that is in April 4th, from April 5 to 17. So there was intense fighting. There was intense fighting. The Japanese were winning, and then the Allied perimeter it shrank to 350 square meter. So itu surround hoigina itu British forces, Allied forces kala do chutu wala ho jaise, right? Because they were completely surrounded by the Japanese soldiers around Garrison Hill. Okay, so the Japanese captured most of the ridge by April 6 with brutal combat at the Deputy Commissioners Pangalo and Tennis Court. Those now, after this initial battle, the Japanese were capturing all this, and but there was relief because the second division of the army arrived on April 18, relieving the garrison. Okay, so from April 18 to May 13, the British were able to counterattack. The Allied forces were able to counterattack. So, you know, 33 corps kan aiche Timor side pura in 7 Indian division kan be aiche, and then they came in reclaimed the Kohima Ridge. Okay, and so there was a battle that happened, the Battle of the Tennis Court on May 13. Using a grand tank, forced the Japanese off key positions. So the the 3 months battle, I've just summarized it like this, right? Because if we go day by day, it will take a lot of time. So the point to remember is initially the Japanese were winning, but then reinforcement came and the Allied forces started to dominate the war. So from May 16 to 31, it started in April 4. We are in May. The Allied forces pushed the Japanese from Naga village and Arudura Spar. Sato, who was the general who was in Kohima, facing starvation and no resupply, defied orders and began retreating on May 31, abandoning positions north of the road. So Japanese can do not. Ini I've watched documentaries. I am going to share documentaries as well, links YouTube lagana. Japanese can do they face a lot of starvation problems, and at the same time, itu naga manukan be takan get help no gore. They were also helping the British, the Allied forces, and so they face a lot of problems. Aro panik areas, all the slush, and then they were also pimar kan be alak alak ulay jase. They faced starvation, and there was no resupply, and so General Sato, he defied orders, and he started retreating on May 31st. So abandoning positions. Okay, so June 22, British and Indian troops from Kohima linked with Impulse, 4 corps reopening the road to Rasta to Pon Guna Takado, Kulijashi, and ending the battle. So Japan lost 5,000 to 7,000 men in the Allied, or the Allies also lost 4,000, marking a turning point in the Burma campaign. So Manu Pishi Morishi na Japanese can 5,000 to 7,000, and the Allied forces also lost around 4,000 soldiers. So many people, more than 10,000 of the soldiers lost their lives in 3 months in Kohima. Okay, so I'm going to share. This is about the Battle of Kohima and how from April 4 to June 22 the battle took place. Now I'm going to share a link of this video. This lady, she was 10 years old. During the Battle of Kohima, she was 10 years old. She is still alive. Her name is Wilhalhu Kiso. Right. This might be mispronouncing, but I'm sorry. So in her story, she says that her father was a teacher, I think, one of the learned man in the village, and General Sato he came and stayed at her place in Kohima, in Kikwima village, and they had to go and live at the uncle's place because they had to vacate the house for General Sato. Okay, so Wilhalo also called Lano witnessed three Japanese soldiers take shelter in her family home in Keguma village. It was Lieutenant General Sato and his officers. So, along with General Sato, there were two officers, Japanese officers, who came and lived at their place. Or Talaw Kordo Inayatagishide. So, this was the place where the commander of the Japanese army, General Sato, lived. And it is a 3-minute video only. She tells how she recounts the war and the observation, her observation about Sato and all this. So very interesting. And another video that was produced by Charles Chassis from Kohima, the Battle of Kohima, around 40 minutes on Naga people's perspective on World War II. So how the Naga people saw the battle between the Japanese and the British. So this is also a documentary. If you have not watched this, very fascinating. You should also watch this. Okay, to get a clear picture of what happened. Now, let's come to the role played by the Nagas because ito important na sa mukhang ganito na exam ganito. So again, very difficult to get. So many books are saying so many different things. I've tried to condense it, okay, from multiple sources. This is the role played by the Nagas. This is where the awards won. And so let's go. So the Nagas played a very important role during World War II, and Naga Levi's, like the Naga soldiers, they fought in the Battle of Kohima in World War II alongside British and Indian troops. The first point is that the Nagas started fighting against the Japanese, and they started fighting along with the British and Indian troops. Secondly, they helped the Allied forces build a very robust intelligence system that enabled the later to take precise and decisive action. So, see, if they ask a question in exam, explain the role played by the Nagas during the Battle of Kohima, 2 marks, 5 marks. Please mention all this. That the Nagas fought alongside the British and Indian troops against the Japanese forces, and then the role played by the Nagas was that they played like they had a robust intelligence system. They were acting like the spies, right? Because the Japanese were there in most of the villages. They had occupied the village. They were living in our homes, right? And so and the Nagas also acted like the porters carrying supplies and guns and ammunition to the battlefield, right? And there was no Red Cross there. So evacuation of the wounded was done by the Nagas only. The patrol parties who were unfamiliar with the terrain were escorted and guided by the Nagas. So the difficult terrain of the Naga hills, the soldiers who did not know the way, they were led by the Nagas only. Right. So also there were several instances where the Japanese soldiers were ambushed or misguided or killed by the Nagas themselves. Many Nagas joined the ranks of soldiers and fought in the war. So Naga youths also joined the army and fought in the battle. So there were several instances where Japanese soldiers were also killed by the Nagas. Right? Okay. So some definite Nagas nam janing na takado history books di nam takakando itukan gaze. So there were two Dubashis, namely Nicole Makritze and Zuko Jimumi. So they provided intelligence reports. Japanese army kandu pipi madi takada imde. These two Dubashis, they provided information to the British and they were helping the British. So the British, the government gave them the British Empire Medal to these two. Secondly is Constable number 47, Razolhi Angami. So he was a Naga Live, which means he was a Naga army soldier fighting in the Battle of Kohima. He helped during operations that led to the recapture of Kizuma village, and he was commended 3 times by the army. Okay, so this is the second name the third name that appears in history, and the third is Saliz Angami. He died fighting for the British on April 17, 1944 at the age of 21. Ay, ini muro majo, at the age of 21, younger than all of you. I'm sure iti class ti daga manuan sob though you are younger than 20, you're older than 21. So Saliza Angami, he was fighting for the British, he was fighting for the Allied forces, and he was killed on April 17, 1944 at the age of 21. And Saliza Angami of Kohima village is the only Naga soldier whose plaque can be found in the Kohima War Cemetery. Kohima War Cemetery, I think there are 1,420 uh, graves or plaque. And out of this 1,420, the only Naga whose plaque can be found in the Kohima War Cemetery is Saliza Angami of Kohima village. Okay, very interesting. So some Nagas who assisted the British during the Battle of Kohima again. Another Angami, Jamidar. This is a title used in the police. Jamidar Visai Angami, who was a platoon commander of the Naga Levies, was awarded the prestigious military cross for gallantry and leadership. He was called by the British troops as the bravest of all the scouts. I mean, exam karni to puriya ase. Okay, we read all this for exam, but reading all this makes me feel very কি কব না British muan British মানুহ কাৰণে মুৰি কিনা ini look na mitai pakura nishna all this that is how I view it, right? Because mugan naga manu bi pishi muri kina takibo, our villages were destroyed, right? And we were fighting for the British. And after the battle is over, they are handing out medals. Ito ba ni lubi, ito ba ni lubi. You help us, ito ba ni lubi. Okay, well and good. But then, if you really think about it, we were helping the ones who were subjugating us. Okay, so he was called by the British troops as the bravest of all the scouts. Wisobi Angami fought alongside British and severely wounded by Japanese officers shot in hand-to-hand combat. Mr. A. Kevichusa served as interpreter and organized Naga laborers. Okay, so these are some of Nagas who received awards. Constable Minguzili Angami awarded the Indian Police Medal. Constable Kruhil Angami awarded the Indian Police Medal again. Niputu Angami of Krizuma village was awarded the prestigious Indian Distinguished Service Medal. 3 Nagas in the regular force received the military cross. 9 Nagas received the military medal. 6 Naga civilians received the Member of British Empire. Villagers of Lazami received a handsome cash reward for capturing 26 Japanese soldiers. Some facts. The British also paid Nagas with salt for Japanese equipment. So 1 LB salt for a rifle. Japanese laga rifle ekta anili do. 1 LB of salt was given. Machine gun ekta anili do. 7 LB of machine salt. 14 LB for an officer's head. Aro officer laga ekta mata anili do. 14 LB of salt. In ekta morum na mga naga manukan do, we were so innocent and so, nimuk uluk pabo karne, we were even ready to give our lives. And the British were using us. The British recognized the Nagas. Ito kanto exam dito nilikiwi. That is just my personal view. The British recognized the Nagas' loyalty and heroism by ordering the construction of a modern hospital in Kohima with traveling dispensaries to serve interior regions of the district. Okay, so the British also were very impressed because without the without the Nagas, they would not have won the war. Nah? So the British also recognized the Nagas by constructing a modern hospital. And I'm assuming it is the present day Naga hospital in Kohima. Okay, so these are some pictures from the Battle of Kohima. The tanks. This is where the battle was fought. Another picture. All this World War II jeeps. Okay, now let's discuss the Kohima War Cemetery. So Kohima War Cemetery also equally important to topic for exam. Let's learn about the details. Now, again, as a human being, Kohima War Cemetery, we know that more than 7,000 Japanese soldiers died in Kohima. right? We don't know, but it, you might be Naga Manukanbe. I'm sure that they also passed away in Kohima, and then there were the elite forces who also passed away in Kohima, right? More than 4,000. Now this Kohima War Cemetery, itu do British kan bro, puna asa do na Commonwealth War Graves Commission kan bro. So all the graves that are here, like I said, one is for that Angami soldier who passed away, and then the rest belongs only to the Allied forces. So from a human perspective, then what about the Japanese people who also died? The 7,000 of them who died in Kohima. There are no graves. Takan be ama baba tagibo, takan be kurmano tagibo. But then their lives were just lost in a foreign land in Kohima. No stone for them, no burial for them, nothing for them, right? Because they were the ones who lost the war, right? So, but then history is like this. Whoever wins the battle, they get all the credit. They rewrite history. Okay, so whatever is written in history books, not everything is true because history is written by those people who wins the war. After winning the war, they write anything, and we need a lot of research, right? But anyway, we'll discuss about the Kohima War Cemetery. So Kohima War Cemetery is a memorial dedicated to the soldiers of the Second British Division of the Allied forces who died in the Second World War at Kohima. So, like I said, the Kohima War Cemetery, though, Allied forces there were many soldiers. Naga can be takise, Indian can be takise, British can be takise, aro alak country can labi takibo. But this Kohima War Cemetery is only for the British soldiers of the Second British Division of the Allied Forces who died in the Second World War at Kohima, the capital of India, in April 1944. Okay, so who maintains this Kohima War Cemetery? The Kohima War Cemetery is maintained by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. This is an important fact that you must remember. Kohima War Graves Commission itu asli Malik to. The Kohima War Cemetery is not under the control of the Indian or the British or the Naga government or whatever, but it is maintained by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, which maintains this cemetery along with many others in the world. Yesterday, we have learned one that Gohoi Sima Zumomi, his grave is here in Marseille, France. That grave is also in France, is also maintained by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Okay, there are 1420 Commonwealth burials of the Second World at the cemetery and war non-burial, in a memorial to additional 917 Hindu and Sikh soldiers who were cremated in accordance with their faith. Okay, so like I have mentioned, there are not only the British soldiers, but Hindus and Indians and Sikh soldiers who also died in Kohima. But takando as per the custom, takando cremate kore, takando bury in the So there's also a memorial for them. Okay. Now I have tried my best to look at what is this non-war burial, because we Commonwealth War Graves Commission laga website TV sashi, they are also saying that there are 1420 Commonwealth burials. Second World War de Morakan, British soldiers kan 1420 do tati ase. Only ekta one non-war burial ase. I don't know who is this guy. One non-war burial means a person who did not participate in the war, but his grave, his memorial is also there. Okay, so into Commonwealth burial of the Second World War, 1420, but there's one non-war burial. If any one of you history student who happens to know who is this non-war person who is buried or whose memorial is there at Kohima War Cemetery, you please let me know also. Okay, so the war cemetery is maintained by the Commonwealth War Commission. We've learned about this. Who designed the cemetery? For your in MCQ, the cemetery was designed by Colin St. Clair Oaks. Okay, it's a beautiful design, I must admit. So, who designed the cemetery? Sir Colin St. Clair Oaks. Who inaugurated the cemetery? It was inaugurated by the commander, who was Sir William Slim, the commander of the 14th Army in Burma, Field Marshal Sir William Slim. Okay, so there are two Victoria Cross recipients. Victoria Cross is like the highest British military honor. So there are two persons, that is Lance Corporal John Pennington Harmon and Captain John Jack Randall. They are the two Victoria Cross recipients buried in Kohima War Cemetery. They were awarded the Victoria Cross posthumously for the actions during the 1944 Battle of Kohima. So itu be ikta. Ini British manukan honor ko. So if you have visited the war cemetery, you know these famous words. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we give our today. Maybe who wrote this? So at the bottom of the Kohima War Cemetery is the memorial of the 2nd Division with the names of the soldiers who gave their lives in the Battle of Kohima inscribed on stone panels. The famous epitaph on the memorial says, when you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we give our today. Okay, so who wrote these lines? It is written by John Maxwell Emmons. John Maxwell Edmonds, he wrote these lines. It is attributed to him, and he was inspired. From where did he get inspiration to write these words? He was inspired by one poet. His name was Simonides. Simonides. Yeah, the Greek pronunciation might be like that. Simonides. In 1480 BC, he wrote something similar to honor the Spartans who fell at the Battle of Thermopylae against the Persian army led by Xerxes. So, in yes, if you know Greek history, there was a battle called the Battle of Thermopylae where the Spartans were defeated. Or I mean, the Spartans were killed by the Persian army, who was led by Xerxes. So, in memory of this, Simonides wrote something similar to this. And so, John Maxwell Emmons also took inspiration from this lines written by poet Simonides in 1480 BC. And then uh, he wrote, when you go home, tell them of us, and for your tomorrow, we give our today. I have tried my best to actually I also wanted to know, Simonides pra kilikishi na that he was so inspired, right? So Simonides pra likado na, it was like this: Go, stranger, and tell the Spartans that here we lie obedient to their commands. This was the line that was written by the poet Simonides in order to honor the Spartans. He wrote the lines, Go, strangers, na? China could be go, strangers, and tell the Spartans that here we lie obedience to their commands. So itu line bra inspiration bagina itu likishi. Itu pator do itabi Kohima War Cemetery as I've seen many people taking pictures. Okay, so this we've already studied. Salizir Linju Angami of Kohima village is the only Naga soldier whose flag can be found in the Kohima War Cemetery. So this is about Kohima War Cemetery, who designed it, who inaugurated it, who wrote the lines, and how many soldiers are buried, all this. Okay, now that's all about the war. See, man, compressed we have spent more than half an hour, I think, discussing about the war. But nevertheless, it's an important topic. So you also please research more on the war. And if you happen to come across more interesting fact, please let me know as well. Now let's move forward. 1944, Kohima battle to Kuishe. Now after the battle, what happens is formation of Naga Hills Tribal Council, Naga Hills District Tribal Council. Formation of Naga Hills District Tribal Council in the year 1945. Formation of Naga Hills District Tribal Council in the year 1945. So Sir Charles Powsey, who was the Deputy Commissioner of Naga Hills District, Charles Powsey, who was the Deputy Commissioner of Naga Hills District, established the Naga Hills District Tribal Council as a forum of various Naga groups in the district to unite the Nagas and help in post-war reconstruction. So wartime, the Kohima was also devastated. So many soldiers were killed, and Nagas, in order to unite the Nagas, the Deputy Commissioner at that time, Sir Charles Powsey, he formed the NHTTC, Formation of Naga Hills District Tribal Council in the year 1945. Who formed it? Sir Charles Powsey. When 1945, what was the aim? In order to unite the Nagas and help in post-war reconstruction. And who Sir Charles Powsey is also regarded as the last British administrator to rule in the Naga Hills. Okay, He is the last ruler. All these questions you ask in your group. Now, any idea when excise department written results will be declared? I'm discussing about Naga history here, and you're worried about the excise department. Well, they were equally important for you, but anyway. So Charles Posey is the last British administrator. What if the Nagas had supported Japan in the Pacific Force? What would the position of Nagaland today? We don't know. We don't know what would have happened. But if the Japanese had defeated there and Subhash Chandra Bose would have captured India, then um, eventually we will also get our independent Indians from the Japanese, like the rest of the Southeast Asian countries have. But the future might have been a little different. The Japanese might have granted sovereignty or something like that. It would certainly have been different. I'm sure of that. Okay, so who was the president of the Naga Hills District Tribal Council? It was Shri Mayang Nukcha was the president. L.N. Kinghen is vice president, and T. Secretary was the general secretary. This is about the. Remember, don't get confused. From now, we will learn a lot of Naga individuals. Who was the president, general secretary? Who was the oldest? This. But we are talking about Naga Hills District Tribal Council. The first president was, or the president was Mayang Nokcha, and vice president was N.L. Kinghen, and this secretary was the general secretary. Because this Naga Hills District Tribal Council, it now becomes NNC. In the year 1946, it becomes Naga National Council. In this NNC is the foundation. Aji 28 factions kan aze. All these factions NNC bra ola aze, right? NNC bra asti bra kiman olaishe. Shillong agard pichide, right? NNC agardis, NNC non agardis, itla pichide, NACN tageshe. NACN became NACN IM, NACN K. NACN K become NACN U, NACN R. All this, okay? So NNC is the parent body, is the first aro itu NNC 1946 di form gradam dido takan underground faction form ground no do. It was a Naga National Council that was fighting for the rights and sovereignty of the Nagas, and they were not underground. Takan underground in 1955-56 day when Jawaharlal Nehru came to India, came to Nagaland. He was humiliated by the Nagas. He went back to Delhi and he sent Indian army troops in order to capture and kill the NNC leaders. At that time, only they went underground. And at this time, 1940, 50s, 60s, it was still the 70s. These early phases of Naga insurgency, our forefathers were genuinely fighting for Naga rights and independence. Okay? And we will know about all this. So 1946 is the formation of Naga National Council. Right. So the Naga Hills District Tribal Council, which was formed in the year 1945, it was reorganized into a political organization which was called the Naga National Council at Woka. Remember where? Kuti reorganized Korea. Ito Naga Hills District Tribal Council, which was formed by Sir Charles Posey with Mayanukcha as the president, King Hen as the vice president, T. Secretary as the general secretary. It was reorganized. Ito takan nam change kurubo. There was a convention in Woka, and in that meeting, he changed the name to Naga National Council on February 2nd, 1946. Right? So, what was the plan? Because by this time, 1945, the Nagas also knew that the British were preparing to exit India. British kanto India charina chaboliaze, and the Nagas' fear was that India laga pitode Nagaland to ahija shuguli. Sorry, the Naga manukandu ahija shuguli. That was their fear, that India would forcefully take Naga Hills or the Nagas into their country. So, but they knew that we Nagas, we have a separate ethnic identity. We had our separate different custom. Even the way we look was Mongolians. We were different from the Indians. We were different from, we were Christians. We were not Hindus and Muslims, right? So we were different. We are not Indians. In no way We don't have any relation with them. We don't follow their religion. We don't follow their food habits. We don't follow their language. We don't follow their culture. Nothing. We don't have any relation with them. It is just that the British happened to rule India, and then the British also happened to rule half of Naga Hills. That was the only connection. That is why NNC was, they reorganized the NHTDC into NNC, a political organization, in order to fight for this. Okay, so that was the aim of NNC. Now, founders and key figures of NNC. Let's look at some members. The first, yeah, in Okade NNC formed Gradamde. The first president was T. Aliba MT. So he was the headmaster of a government high school in Mukukchung. He was selected as the first president of NNC at Oka. Not to be confused with Mayonukcha. Mayonukcha wala do Naga Hills District Tribal Council lagado, right? And the Mayonukcha do ita do vice president ho jaise, right? Mayonukcha became the vice president and was instrumental in early organization efforts. He later became president early in 1950 and was succeeded by AZ Fizo. Okay. First president of NNC, T. Aliba MT. At that time, vice president was Mayanukcha. Later on, he would become president and he was succeeded by Fizo. Kivichusa Angami was the first secretary. Angami Zapu Fizo. So we will learn more about Fizo later on. But Fizo joined the NNC in 1946 and quickly rose to prominence. Right? His wartime collaboration with the Japanese in INA gave him a nationalist vision, and he became president in 1950, radicalizing the movement. So yes, a little bit about Fizo before we will learn about him later in our later classes. But Fizo was, it is very interesting that at that time, 1940s day, Fizo was in Burma working for an insurance company. I don't know what insurance company, but he was apparently working for an insurance company in Burma. And then he met the Japanese soldiers, he met the Indian National Army who were trying to overthrow the British in India. And so he was he gained a lot of insights, and then his mindset, everything about the war, about the world, it changed him. And then he came back to Naga Hills, and he joined the NNC in 1946. And then since he had a lot of experience traveling in Burma and meeting with the Japanese and possibly Subhash Chandra Bose and INA, it gave him a nationalist vision because he was one of the persons who had seen the world outside of the Naga Hills, right? And after he became president in 1950, things went a little differently, right? So after the formation of the NNC, he published a journal which was called the Naga Nation. So the Naga Nation was a monthly journal published by NNC. So the person responsible for the edition and publication was T. Sakri, who was the secretary, right? Oh no, his name was not mentioned. He was the secretary of the Naga Health District Tribal Council, but T. Sakri and V. Iralo were the persons credited with the Naga Nation, was the monthly journal published by NNC. Okay, so this is about the formation of NNC, why NNC was formed, who were the founding members of NNC. So 1946, NNC now is going in the right direction because NNC has to demand autonomy, that Nagas are autonomous. Nagas are not Indians. When the British go back to Britain, when the British leave India, Nagas should be given autonomous status. We should not be treated the same way as Indians. So in 1946, in the month of June, Naga National Council he started demanding for autonomy. Okay, so it was another convention, 1946 at Woka. At that time, the cabinet mission to India in 1946, the report was published, and then it passed a resolution. NNC passed a resolution. In that resolution, it said that NNC was against grouping of Assam with Bengal and wanted the Naga Hills district to be included in an autonomous Assam in the independent India. It further emphasized local autonomy for the Naga Hills district and a separate electorate for the Naga tribes. This was the demand of the NNC. That because at that time Naga Hills was under Assam, right? So Assam was now going to be under Bengal, and Bengal is India. So automatically Naga Hills also becomes 100% Indian, right? So the Naga National Council said that Naga Hills district should be an autonomous area under Assam in the independent India, right? And there should be complete autonomy for the Nagas and a separate electorate for the Naga tribes. This were the NNC demand for autonomy in the year 1946. Now, next year, in February 20, 1947, NNC demands for an interim government. Because if the Nagas are to rule themselves, because prior to this, the British were the ones who were ruling the Nagas, right? Deputy commissioner and then subdivisional officers. The British were the one who were controlling the Naga hills. Now, if the British were to go back to leave India, then Nagas had to rule themselves. That's why NNC demands for an interim government in February 1920, right? So initially, the NNC was, like I said, initially the NNC was demanding for autonomy within Assam. But then the next year, the NNC also realized that no, autonomy igla brother no homo. We need to now seek full self-determination, right? So that was the idea that NNC went forward with. So on February 9, 1947, the NNC Council met in Kohima and passed a resolution asserting that Nagas' right to determine the future. So this led to a formal proposal submitted on February 20, 1947, to the British and Indian authorities requesting an interim Naga government under Karjan power, likely a Britain or a neutral entity for 10 years, after which the Nagas would decide their permanent status. Now, so the NNC is saying that ityado India can be independence Pavoliaze, right? Because 1946, 47, British were already leaving India. So NNC said they passed a resolution, they had a meeting, and then they submitted the proposal in February 20, 1947, just 3-4 months before India's declaration of independence on August 15th, that is tomorrow, to the British and Indian authorities, saying that Nagaland, Naga Manu Kanido, ikta interim government ikta mohan form group for 10 years. And this interim government would be under a guardian power. Guardian power means Indian noble lagi. It should be like a British or a neutral entity, right? For 10 years. After 10 years, Nagas would decide their permanent status. This was the demand of the NNC. Remember NNC Laga formation 1946. After that, 1946, they started seeking for autonomy. Initially, they were seeking autonomy within Assam. But later on, when they started seeing that, okay, things are not going as they plan, and then, you know, they decided that okay, we need to demand for self-determination. That is why they said we will have an interim government for 10 years under our guardian power. Okay, so this were the initial phase of the NNC. Please, itu kan so mentally para kiba korbe because NNC do inika jado 19 2024 dak Peter Manu laga do problem do kota kore asida mo na from now on we will be talking only about the Peter Manu laga problem or Peter Manu laga issue. But NNC laga itu starting di tagan kini ka iman bahal lagi sih iman you were fighting for the aspirations, right, of the Nagas, and how they lost the plot we will learn later on. Now I think yes we will stop here. 9 points agreement kalikota korbo. We will stop here for this morning. Kobinat Bordoloi subcommittee. Important for exams. Why I'm saying important for exams? Because this Kopinat Portfolio subcommittee, you will not find this topic in most of the Nagaland books that are published in the bookstores. And like I said, NPSC is asking questions which are not there in the book these days. So Kopinat Portfolio subcommittee becomes an important topic for NPSC. Now, in May 1947, the Kopinath Bordoloi Subcommittee formed under Constituent Assembly's Advisory Committee on Tribal Affairs. So there was a Constituent Assembly's Advisory Committee on Tribal Affairs. Under this, the Kopinath Bordoloi Subcommittee was formed in May 1947, And this committee visited Kohima to negotiate with Naga leaders. Now, remember, NNC was demanding for interim government. NNC was demanding that it should not be within India, but it should be under a guardian power, a neutral state like Britain. And so, India manokan chalak to aze. They were forming all these committees and they were coming to Kohima to negotiate with the Naga leaders. So the Gopinath Portoloi subcommittee was formed and they visited Kohima to negotiate with the Naga leaders. And who was the chairman of this committee? It was Gopinath Portoloi. Who was Gopinath Portoloi? He was the Assam Premier, right? What was the aim of the committee? To integrate tribal areas into India's constitutional framework. So it was not a plan do. India laga tribal area do Nagaland di daga, or sorry, Naga Hills di daga, Northeast di daga tribals kan do India laga constitution under the Anibuli. That was the plan of the Gopinath Portoloi subcommittee, which was formed under the Constituent Assembly's Advisory Committee on Tribal Affairs. Now, they started having negotiation with the NNC leaders, but then NNC was demanding for self-determination. And India was demanding, not demanding, but India wanted integration. That all the states, British Kandaga, India, all this should be integrated into India. This was the aim of India. NNC lagado self-determination that we should Naga should determine themselves, right? That is why it was not very fruitful. So initially, Mayanukcha Au was appointed as a member of the Portoloi subcommittee, but he did not accept the position. As a result, T. Aliba MT was included in his place as a Naga representative on the committee. Remember about this, that who was the Naga member? Who was the Naga member on the Gopinath Portoloi subcommittee? Option D, that is wrong because he was appointed, initially he was appointed as a member, but time mo ito lang committee do member no hobo ko siya. Right? That is why Alipa MT was included in his place as the Naga representative on the committee. Okay, so let me stop shouting for this morning. Hey, tomorrow is Independence Day, so let's call it a Chuti Gurwa Kalido. Because Mondo.
Yes.
So we will continue on Monday, right? So itiadak kiman discuss for now. You also try to mentally get into mental framework about all this because from Monday we will start about in Sibra. What is this? 9 points agreement. Yeah, 9 points agreement bra China itu Pitrumano Kiman from all this we will discuss from Monday. Okay, so the questions that I've shared in PDF, for those of you who wants to start answer practice, you start writing answers from now. Okay, you refer to the questions. All these questions are from more than 10 years of questions, question paper. After you are done with that, I'll give you more questions. Okay, but first you finish the question paper. 10 years question paper. First finish Kurbi. I'll give you additional questions for you. Aro, you write the answers so well that tomorrow, even if you don't pass NPSA, you print a book and sell, na? You'll earn a lot of money. Okay, so that's it for. Okay, so I'm ending the class. Okay, so please have a nice.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir. Thank you so much.